4 university friends have chosen West Virginia forest for a rafting trip, clueless about its dangers. Simultaneously, a group of notorious detainees is set to be transported en route to the area. They soon find themselves at the mercy of one of the forest's inhabitants, Three Finger. A small group of friends, Alex, Sophie, Brent, and Trey, are having fun while rafting at the West Virginia forest territory. They rest by the riverside, and the men notify the women that they'll look for firewood. Alex smokes, and Sophie takes off her upper garment. Alex comments unfavorably towards her friend's behavior, but the lady shrugs her off, saying it's okay since they're in the middle of the woods. Brent returns immediately, and not wanting to be a third wheel, Alex leaves Brent and Sophie to look for Trey. As soon as she leaves, the two begin their acts of intimacy. However, when Brent touches Sophie's chest, an arrow pierces it and his hand. They shriek in pain, and a man with a grotesque appearance, Three Finger, appears behind the bushes, holding a bow and arrow while laughing dementedly. Brent runs away, leaving Sophie, while Alex returns upon hearing the screams, just in time to see the stranger shoot an arrow at Sophie, piercing her friend's skull. The man approaches Sophie and tastes her while Alex gasps and hides for dear life. Trey returns at that moment, which distracts Three Finger, so Alex grabs the chance to escape. The cannibal shoots Trey in the shoulder, but he manages to run into the woods. Three Finger pursues him relentlessly and effortlessly, knowing the forest like the back of his hands. He sees a wooden spear and grabs it as Trey trips and falls. The cannibal goes to him and pierces his head. Meanwhile, Brent runs while screaming for help. He stops when he feels something on his leg, and before he knows it, he's caught in a trap and split into 3. The cannibal rushes to him and excitedly tastes him. On the other hand, in the West Virginia Grafton Penitentiary, the detainees spend their leisure time. A burly man, Floyd, suddenly stops weightlifting and approaches Chavez, a leader of a felonious organization. They talk about a plan that involves money, and Floyd is hyped for it to succeed. Chavez warns that everything will go smoothly if the counterpart does as told. The burly man gets offended, but the leader smirks at him, brewing tension between them. At the guard's locker room, Walter, a cop, greets a coworker and friend, Nate, enthusiastically, mentioning the others being late on his last day at work. Walter informs him that the warden expects him for a detainee transport that evening. When Nate meets the warden, he's surprised to see the detainee, Willie Juarez, whom the boss explains as an undercover. The cop and another police officer, Marshall Davis, will assist with the transfer to Hazleton, especially for Carlo Chavez. The warden explains that the transport is supposed to be next week, but he pushed it tonight with a different route since there may be an escape attempt from Chavez's group. Marshall Davis tells Nate that he should gain Carlo's trust, and the warden adds that the only people who know this reroute are the people in the room. Meanwhile, Deputy Lane receives a call at the sheriff's station about the missing university students at Bluefish River area. Sheriff Carver immediately calls the patrol dog, Leon, to accompany him in scanning the area. At the Grafton Penitentiary, Nate and Walter enter Chavez's cell to take him out for the transfer. The leader refuses to leave since it's not on the schedule, so Walter uses his authority to make him move. They proceed to the preparation room, where the officers are chaining the other detainees. Crawford, a car thief, refuses to be chained beside Brandon, a former Marine charged with ending a person's life. The thief scorns and blabbers about the soldier, so Brandon emphasizes he's innocent and it's accidental, while Willie interjects the conversation to fit in. Walter reminds Crawford that Floyd, who ended 3 people's lives, is also chained beside him. The thief argues that the burly man is his friend. Walter ushers them all to the bus, and the warden arrives to remind Nate of their fuel stop and the sheriff's arrival 20 minutes prior for safety purposes. Soon, the bus moves out of the penitentiary with Nate, Walter, and Preslow as guards. Willie begins talking profanities about the sudden transfer to start a conversation with Chavez, but he fails. Then, the leader asks Floyd about the status of something. Floyd confirms that he has already informed his men ahead of time. Meanwhile, Walter asks Nate about his plans, and his friend explains that he plans to finish law school to make some money, then retire to live a comfortable life. Walter remarks that Nate will be too old by then and won't be able to enjoy, reminding him that money isn't everything. That evening, they stop by the sheriff's station for a bathroom break and refueling. Sheriff Carver recognizes Nate, and the two reminisce about the old times while the younger cop greets Leon. Walter confirms if they know each other, and the older officer shares that Nate grew up in the area with his father, who was also a cop. Meanwhile, the sheriff asks Nate why they have to go through Greenbrier by the Old Mill Road, and the younger officer answers that it's due to a high-profile criminal. Unbeknownst to them, another cannibal with 3 toes, Three Finger's son, sets traps in the forest with the help of his father. Soon after, the detainees and the cops resume their journey. Once on the Old Mill Road, a truck suddenly appears and tails them while honking. Walter gets annoyed, and Nate Nate calms him down as he shares a knowing glance with Willie, thinking it's Chavez's men, so they arm themselves. The truck bumps them, trying to topple the bus over, while Walter and Nate contact reinforcement to no avail due to the signal loss. Then, the truck releases barbed wires that tangle the bus tires, making them crash into the woods. The truck stops, revealing Three Finger, who looks over at the crash scene. Nate releases the detainees in the bus as it's about to blow, but as soon as he does, Floyd and Chavez trick him into getting his gun and demand the keys. Nate negotiates to save his comrades and retrieve the key in the bus. Suddenly, Preslow points his shotgun at Chavez, to Nate's relief. However, a knife comes flying, striking Preslow on the neck, to which Floyd proudly praises, thinking it's his men, while Chavez grabs the gun. Arrows are shot toward them, almost hitting the leader, accompanied by demented laughter, making them realize it's not their men. Chavez shoots toward the woods and only cackling echoes, so he commands everyone to hide, even if Nate declares that he must rescue Walter, who's still on the bus. Once they take cover, Chavez commands Nate to retrieve the key to release them from the chains, to which he immediately obeys to save Walter. As soon as he goes out with his friend, the bus explodes. Afterward, Chavez points the gun at his head, so Nate instantly offers him the key, and the group walks away while the officers become hostages by the detainees. When the leader thinks they're at a safe distance, they release themselves from the chains, but the keys won't work. Floyd declares Nate needs to be eliminated, but Chavez shows his authority by proclaiming it's him who decides who live, especially since Nate is a useful compass. He commands Nate to lead them to a phone so that he can contact his men. Having no choice, the cop explains that there's a nearby watchtower with a communication device, and the group resumes their journey. Suddenly, Alex jumps toward Nate and attacks him. The cop calms her down and inquires what happened to her. She explains that they were attacked by a man that eats people, and the detainees mockingly laugh at her. Since Chavez heard about rafts from Alex, he takes the lady to lead towards the direction as their means to escape. Unfortunately, Alex gets everyone lost in the woods, but they find a wrecked sealed truck. Chavez commands Nate to look around while Brandon and Alex want to keep moving. The leader pushes Nate to explore the truck, where he finds a gun and hides it immediately. He also collects a key and hands it over to Chavez. The leader opens the truck and finds bags of money, which starts a fight between Willie and Floyd due to the shares they want out of it. Chavez breaks the fight and tells everyone to bring 2 bags. Brandon expresses he doesn't need the money, but Chavez uses the gun to keep control. Amidst the commotion, Nate gives the old gun to Walter, saying Chavez won't suspect him. The leader demands Walter pick up the bags despite the injuries, but the cop refuses. Having the courage with his hidden gun, Walter shoots Chavez. Unfortunately, it's unloaded, so Chavez beats him up and shoots him in the head. Soon after, they resume walking to find the rafts. Suddenly, a trap pops out, and Nate pushes Alex away. Three Finger's son comes out of the pile of leaves and attacks Floyd, but Chavez shoots it down. The leader asks Alex if it's the cannibal, and she says the one she saw is full grown. Realizing it's the son, Chavez decapitates the young cannibal to send a warning to Three Finger. They soon arrive by the riverside and find 2-person rafts. Arguments begin as Chavez declares that the money will be loaded on those. Nate uses the chance to slit the rafts to make them unusable, so the group resumes their journey. After a while, they hear Three Finger's cries of agony upon discovering his son's decapitated head on a wooden stick. On the other hand, Deputy Lane calls the sheriff to inform him about a truck seen in the area where the students got lost. The older cop asks if there's any call from Nate, and since there's none, the sheriff heads out to check since he's got a bad feeling. In the forest, Chavez spots a key hanging in the woods, and Nate recognizes it as Preslow's keys. The leader approaches it, thinking it can unlock the chains, so Willie topples Chavez as Nate pounces on him. Willie stands, and a scythe unexpectedly cuts off his face, accompanied by Three Fingers' cackles. Floyd shoots at the cannibal repeatedly but fails miserably. The detainees realize the grave situation, and Alex declares that the cannibal is hunting them. Chavez reminds everyone that once dawn breaks and they're not in Hazleton, authorities will pursue them too, so they need to hurry. Being chained on the feet, Chavez, with Floyd's assistance, cuts off Willie's legs so they can move again. Soon, the group finds themselves in a dilapidated hut where they find tools to cut off their chains. Once they do, Floyd confronts Chavez about the money and the escape, and they agree that the leader will get more money in exchange for Floyd's safety. They resume their journey again, and Brandon starts a conversation with Nate, expressing his intention to help them since he realizes that the cop is just making them walk in circles in the forest. Alex chimes in that she also notices this, so they must act soon. Then, they see Three Fingers' truck parked by the road, so Chavez and Floyd force Crawford to check it out since he's the car thief. Having no choice, he approaches it, and Three Finger, hiding in the driver's seat, activates the trap, enclosing Crawford in barbed wires. The group is stupefied to see the thief hanging, wrapped in barbed wires, as the truck drives off. Chavez and Floyd blame Nate for the incident and point their guns at him, so Brandon chimes in, emphasizing that they need the cop to get around. Meanwhile, Crawford gets dragged on the road, making him bleed and scrape to his demise. On the other hand, Alex and Brandon stop walking as they claim they're tired, especially as they carry heavy bags of money. The former soldier suggests leaving the money so they can move freely and fast. Floyd grabs Alex and suggests heinous actions before ending her life since she's slowing them down, but the lady fights back, making the burly man fall to the ground. Enraged, he charges toward Alex, but Chavez stops him by threatening him with a shotgun as he picks up Floyd's gun. The burly man tries to retrieve his gun, but Chavez refuses, giving him complete control of the situation. Afterward, they resume their journey. Meanwhile, Deputy Lane patrols the area to look for Alex's group and parks on the side of the road when suddenly she hears a faint cackling. In the forest, Floyd spots an axe on the ground and grabs it to attack Chavez. The two fight fiercely as Alex and Nate run to escape while Brandon chooses to stay and watch. Simultaneously, Sheriff Carver finds the detainees' bus and reports the breakout to the authorities. On the other hand, Chavez beats Floyd, who's now unconscious. He asks Brandon which direction the two ran away to, but the soldier denies seeing them. Brandon negotiates with Chavez, handing over all the money to the leader in trade for his freedom and a gun to protect himself. Unbeknownst to them, Floyd has already woken up. Meanwhile, Three Finger arrives home to check if his meal is cooking properly. Then, he heads out once more. Afterward, Chavez intercepts Alex and Nate, making them fall hostage again. They soon arrive at the location of the watchtower only to find it burned down, so Chavez loses patience and beats up Nate. Alex interrupts, saying that she can feel that the cannibal is nearby. When Chavez is about to shoot Nate, Leon bites his arm, and the sheriff threatens Chavez. Nate retrieves Brandon's gun and explains the situation, especially about the cannibal, which the older officer understands. When they're about to move, Alex repeats that she feels the cannibal is near. Then, the laughter is heard, and the sheriff looks up, only to be greeted with a spear piercing his head. Chavez grabs the chance to take the sheriff's gun and ushers the group to escape, with him as the leader. On the other hand, Floyd finds the bags of money the group has left and happily grabs them. After a while, Chavez and the group arrive at the spot and find the money gone. Thinking it's Floyd, he heads out to search alone. Simultaneously, Floyd arrives by the riverbank, celebrating his victory. Chavez sees him across the river, and the burly man taunts him by throwing some money away without noticing that Three Finger is behind him. The cannibal lights up a Molotov cocktail and throws it toward Floyd, burning the man and the money. Enraged by losing his wealth, Chavez locates Three Finger with the group and pushes Alex out as bait. The cannibal arrives and throws a Molotov cocktail on the ground to cause a fire barrier as he drags the lady into his car. Nate refuses to lead Chavez to safety because he wants to save Alex, so the leader decides to end his life. Fortunately, Brandon attacks him to save Nate, and he grabs the gun to escape. They soon separate ways for their different objectives. Meanwhile, Alex attempts to escape once the truck stops, but she gets dragged into the house, where she's constrained face down by barbed wires. She sees Deputy Lane wrapped in barbed wires in one corner of the room. Three Finger arrives as Alex cries in fear. He checks if the deputy is alive and proceeds to the younger lady. He takes out his knife, but helicopters arrive at the area, distracting him, so he heads out. At the same time, Brandon hides from the helicopters, but Chavez hits him on the head, making him unconscious. Chavez retrieves the gun and heads out to confront Three Finger. The two battle, and Chavez slashes the cannibal with an axe on the shoulder and chest. He approaches Three Finger for an ending blow, but the cannibal uses his hook hand to cut Chavez's arm. The man tries to fight, but he's pierced in the back with the hook and is hanged on the tree. Then, Three Finger finally ends Chavez and relishes his victory. On the other hand, Nate finally locates Alex and frees her. The two limp away as the cop sees Deputy Lane. Three Finger pops out behind the two, and Nate fights back with all his might but gets defeated. Alex grabs a knife and stabs the cannibal's shoulder, but she's thrown off to the wall. Then, the cannibal takes the axe to chop off Nate's head. Luckily, Leon arrives and bites Three Finger. However, the dog soon perishes at the hands of the cannibal. Three Finger returns to Nate to finish him off. Just in time, Alex sees a wooden spear and charges toward the cannibal, piercing his chest. Three Finger falls on the ground, revealing the wooden spear to be what he used to display his son's head. Afterward, Alex and Nate drive away in relief using the cannibal's truck. However, sudden demented laughter can be heard, only to find out that Three Finger is still alive and has jumped into the truck. Nate tries to shake him off by swerving until he loses control and crashes into a tree back in the forest. The truck lights up in flames, and the two are trapped inside. Fortunately, Brandon arrives and rescues them. Suddenly, Three Finger attacks them again with the axe. Nate grabs the hook and pierces the cannibal's head, then throws him on top of the blazing truck as it explodes and burns. The three walk away, and Nate lets Brandon leave, promising not to report he's alive. However, he warns the soldier to stay out of trouble. Alex and Nate sit in the middle of the road as the cops and reinforcements arrive. A few days later, Nate returns to the forest to retrieve the remaining money they left in the truck. He smiles in relief as he imagines how he can live comfortably. He suddenly stops, only to drop dead with an arrow through his chest. Brandon walks toward him, mocking Nate's decision to let him leave. He throws the cop's body to the side as he excitedly grabs the bags of money, unaware that an unknown cannibal has already approached him. In a short while, Brandon's screams echo in the forest.
Subscribe to watch more videos videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.